Buying luxury items like designer handbags secondhand can be a very scary experience. Is it going to be fake? Is it going to be as described? Is it going to be damaged? Are they scamming me? These are all the thoughts that used to swirl around my head before I hit the buy now button when I first started buying pre-loved and vintage designer handbags. And you know what, to be honest, 5-6 years later, I still get these thoughts sometimes when it seems like it's a little bit sketchy. And in these 5-6 years that I've been collecting vintage designer handbags, I've made a few blunders. And today I'm going to tell you my 5 worst pre-loved buying mistakes that I've made so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And for each of the mistakes, I'm going to tell you what happened in the story, what bag I was buying, where I went wrong in the scenario, and what I've learned from that. So that way you don't make the same mistakes I did, because some of these mistakes can be costly. Now, I know sometimes things happen, like sometimes a mistake happens, but it's not malintention. Like I didn't have a malicious seller, and just sometimes stuff happens. But in some of the scenarios, I suspect there was some unscrupulous or devious behavior. So I will tell you for which mistakes I believe that seller was being, at least at the very slightest, a little bit devious. So mistake number 1, I bought a fake bag. So I was hunting down a Louis Vuitton monogram Pochette Accessoires. Now this bag I was heavily influenced to buy from YouTube. I myself now own 2 vintage Louis Vuitton Pochette Accessoires in the epi leather, 21cm size, 24cm size. But this one, I wanted a monogram one as a gift for one of my sisters. So one of my sisters, I already had procured her one and she was loving it. And I thought the other sister would enjoy that bag too, because as it stands, she doesn't have any monogram in her collection. She does have the Empreinte monogram, but not the canvas monogram. And so I was hunting one down, and you know me, I'm a vintage bargain hunter. So I wanted one at a reasonable price, and the condition had to be at least to a certain standard, because this sister doesn't like things that's too worn out, too vintage. So I was hunting, and I found one from someone selling it in Australia. Now, they weren't a professional reseller. It appeared as though they were just selling something from their personal collection. So I looked at the photos on the ad. Now, what got me with this ad was that they were also selling the bag charm. It was like one of those ones that is like an extender, a strap extender included with the bag. And the price that they were selling it for was the same price that other people were just selling the plain bag. Now that should have been a red flag for me, because when the price is too good to be true, that's probably exactly what it is. It's too good to be true. Now, what I did was I got the bag and then I had it authenticated. And what did it come up with? Not authentic. And then I went into a panic. Contacted the seller. They were like, no, it's definitely authentic. And I'm like, no, I got it authenticated, it's not. And they were like, oh, okay, we'll take the bag back. And then they never sent me a postage label, ghosted me. So I got eBay help to intervene for me, and they provided me a postage label, and I sent the bag back. I just followed the tracking until it got there and it says delivered. They still ghosted me. I didn't hear anything from them. So now I don't have the money and I don't have the bag. Like, I'm out of pocket twice now. So then I contacted eBay help again, and they issued the refund for me. What happened to the bag? What happened to that seller? I don't know, because they just completely ghosted me. Now, where did I go wrong that I fell for a fake bag? Number 1, I didn't do my research properly enough. After looking at the photos that they put on the ad, if I had scrutinized those photos better, done more research as to what an authentic one should have looked like, I would have picked up that it looked wrong. The date code looked wrong. It didn't look quite right. But that was on me. I didn't scrutinize it enough, and I walked into that trap. And then the other thing where I went wrong was I fell for the price, because the price was too good to be true. Now, what lessons have I learned from this? If I'm not comfortable with the seller, I should get the bag pre-authenticated, not authenticated after it's in my hands and I've already given over the money. I should get it pre-authenticated. So even if I lose that money that I paid for the authentication service, I would have saved myself the hassle of paying those hundreds of dollars and needing it to get it back. Number 2, I needed to have scrutinized the photos better and taken more time to do the research. I have a huge problem with FOMO, and that's where I went wrong. Lesson learned. Take my time, research, think about it better. Now, in this scenario, I do believe there was some deviousness with the seller, because they just ghosted me. They didn't try to fight me on it to say it was authentic. They didn't try to bring up any knowledge that they have of the brand to prove that it was authentic. They just pretended like they were going to work with me on the issue and then ghosted me. So I believe that this seller was being devious, and I walked right into that trap, and I don't want anyone else to walk into other people's devious traps. And it's really important to check your platform or your seller's buyer protection policy and refund policy as well. Because eBay has a good buyer protection and refund policy, I was protected in this case. Okay, bag number 2. This is the vintage Louis Vuitton Cartouchiere GM bag. And this was my very first vintage Louis Vuitton bag I had ever bought in my life. And it broke on day 1 of use. Broke. Now, in this case, I'd actually bought the bag from my favorite Japanese seller, brand JFA. So on the listing, it said monogram, good condition, leather, dry. Now, this was many years ago, so I can't remember all the exact details, but they are the facts that I remember. It said good monogram canvas, dry leather. Now, I, at this point, really no experience buying vintage or pre-loved designer bags. This is my first purchase, and I have no experience touching and feeling it. Like, I didn't touch one until that came into my hands. So I got the bag. I was so excited. I was taking photos of myself wearing the bag. And then the next day, I was ready to use the bag. I was having a day out in the city, packed my bag full of stuff, heavy stuff, a lot of things I was carrying with me, and it broke before I got out the door. I must say, I had a lot of heavy stuff. Like, I had kilos of stuff in there. So maybe that's my bad. Maybe you shouldn't be putting kilos of stuff into a designer handbag, but I did. And it broke before I got out the door. Now, the good thing was it didn't break when I was out. So that way I changed the bag, but it broke before I got out the door. And I was panicking. I was like, oh my God, I just spent 500 Australian dollars on this bag. Oh my God, first time buying vintage. Is this what happens every time? I panicked. Quickly contacted the seller. Now, they said they would take the bag back. But because for me, with Australian law, if it's something that's not as described, the seller takes the postage costs. And they said, oh, they would, but for me to send the receipt and they would reimburse me. Now, at this point, I was just panicking. I just wanted to get my $500 back. And then I was like, okay, we'll deal with the postage cost, whatever. I just take the bag back and give me money. So then I packaged all it up. I paid for express back to Japan with insurance, got my money back. Then they ghosted me on the refund of my postage. Okay, so that's where we are at. I was happy I got my money back. I was like, hello, postage. Now, where did I go wrong? Now, I didn't have much experience with buying, with reading descriptions regarding the niche of vintage items. So I'm like reading these words, good monogram canvas, dry leather. But what do these words actually mean to someone who has no experience with vintage designer handbags? I'm like, dry leather, okay. I didn't realize dry leather meant it could crack and break because I didn't know these things. I just knew it was dry. I just didn't know what the implication of the dryness was. So at the time, little experience, I didn't know how to interpret the information that I was getting about the ad listing, the description, and the photos. And I didn't understand the reality of buying a vintage handbag that, yes, it can be super worn out, can be on the brink of breaking. Now, I've been buying pre-loved and vintage in terms of op shop items, thrift store items, but never really like vintage designer handbags before. So I thought that I was well versed on buying used items, but not in this niche. Now, what did I learn from that I can impart onto you? Number one, read the description carefully. Scrutinize the photos carefully. You can see that I had a lot of that green oxidation on the hardware. So that could have been a sign for me to say, hey, okay, well, keep an eye on that rivet. But you know, I didn't know what these things meant. And a green rivet doesn't always mean it's going to break on you. So, I mean, who was to know that was going to happen? Probably even me now as a more experienced buyer would not be able to predict that that bag was going to break just because there's green oxidation on that rivet. And again, double checking the platform or the seller's buyer protection and refund policy. Because ultimately, from scenario number 1 and scenario number 2, I was protected in both cases, was able to ship the bag back for a refund and get my money back with relatively not too much hassle. And I didn't fight hard enough to get my postage money back. To be honest, at that point, I was so anxious about getting that $500 back. I was just happy after that. I'm like, whatever, postage money, I'm going to let that go. because I was scared. I didn't have experience in this area, and I was just happy to have my $500 back. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I bought a used item and it broke. Are they going to believe me? I don't know. Now, I don't believe brand JFA were being malicious at all. If I thought they were a malicious seller, I wouldn't keep shopping with them. But I thought in that case, as a big seller, you have a lot of inventory. You know, they didn't think it was going to break either, or else they would have put that in the description and priced it accordingly, but they happily took it back. So kudos to them. Now, the next story, this one, even thinking about the scenario just to talk about it, still pees me off to this day. Okay, Chanel, my very first vintage Chanel, torn bag. Buying a bag that is torn or ripped or damaged. Okay, so this is my very first vintage Chanel bag. She's a Series 2, and I got her from a private or individual seller, again from eBay Australia, so not a professional reseller. She was selling her own bag from her own collection, very similar to story number 1. And she kind of sent, oh, you know, it's worn, sent the photo. I've had this bag sparred since, and she priced it at $700 Australian back in 2000 and either 18 or 19. Now, for back then, it was possible to get Chanel bags, you know, under this $1,000 price point for the non-classic bags. And that's where I was at. Now, for this one, again, I should have known the price was too good to be true. So I asked for extra photos. I asked a couple of different questions because by this time I'd been watching people like Hey June and Mel in Melbourne and learning about all the little tips and tricks on how to buy pre-loved on eBay. And I thought, oh, I'm getting more savvy at this, you know. And then with this bag, okay, so I asked for the extra photos. Nowhere did I see that there was a rip anywhere on the bag. So I thought I'm just kind of getting like a worn bag, you know, faded. I could deal with that. So pay her, get the bag, and there's this huge rip in the corner. I'm like, can I live with this? I don't know. Even in the extra photos, it was always angled so that that rip was never shown. Okay, to me, that's devious. I asked for extra photos, and you make sure this rip is never shown in any of the photos, and it's not in the description. Okay. That's devious to me. That's why this story pees me off every time I think about it. Oh, just getting annoyed just thinking about it at the moment. Anyway, so I get the bag. I get this rip. I'm like, I can't. This is not right. Contact the seller. And she was kind of just like, well, what did you expect for the price? You know, it's going to have wear and tear to it. And I'm like, I expect you to be honest about the condition. Anyway, she's like, what do you want to do? You want to send it back to me or you want to keep it? So there was no offer of a partial refund, which is what I wanted. And at that time, I wasn't experienced in you know, pushing for a partial refund. So I decided to keep it in the end. I talked myself into keeping it in that, hey, look, you know, she's probably right for the price, you know. And then I sent it for a spa. Now, the spa cost me an extra $600. I'm at to $1,300 at this rate. And even the spa service, I wasn't totally happy. I felt like I paid a lot and I wasn't totally happy with the spa service I got. They did repair the rip. But now it's been years and the rip is starting to surface again. Whatever that they did, it's starting to come off. So yeah, I'm not totally happy with the spa service either. And that was nearly the same price as the bag. Now tell me guys, do you think I'm overreacting because I'm biased in this situation? Like, I'm peed off at this seller still years later and I think she was being devious. So tell me what you think. Do you agree or do you disagree and you think I just can't be objective because I'm in the situation? Let me know what you have done. Would you have just sent the bag back or would you have kept it or would you have pushed for a partial refund? Let me know. Now, where did I go wrong in this scenario? Maybe it's because I didn't ask specifically where are all the wears and tears, any rips. Maybe I should have gotten down to the really nitty gritty instead of being vague in my questions about, how's the condition, any damage? Maybe I should have been like, where is the rip? Are there any rips? How many rips are there? Maybe that's what I should have done. Maybe I should have asked for even more photos after I asked for the first set of photos. And I definitely should have pushed for that partial refund. Now, lessons learned. You can never ask for enough photos and you can never ask enough questions. Don't be shy. If you're spending hundreds of dollars on something, Just ask. If the seller gets annoyed, that's on them. If they want to make the sale, they're going to make the sale either with you or someone else. They don't have to choose you. Maybe they'll choose someone else who asks less questions, but that's not your problem. Your problem is to make sure you are getting the right product for the amount of money you're spending. Even if that means you miss out, it means that seller was probably a red flag and not the right seller for you anyway. So you can never ask for enough photos. You can never ask enough questions. And again, regarding the platform, checking the refund policy and buyer protection policy. In this case, I didn't utilize it because I decided to keep the bag. And also, I believe, this is just my general consensus, I find it easier to shop with the professional resellers like the Japanese consignment stores instead of individual people selling from their collection. Because out of all of these stories I'm telling you today, most of them were from individual sellers, and that's because they're not as professional as the professional sellers. What a shame about this bag. Mistake number 4. This is the Louis Vuitton Monceau in the monogram, a vintage bag. This bag was sold to me with non-genuine parts and it wasn't declared in the description. So this was from a Facebook seller. She's an individual seller. I don't know if she sells a lot of things, but she's not a store, and from a Facebook group. I was FOMOing for the monogram Monceau, and I had been for years, and now it was year 2021 and it had been a couple of years since I've been chasing the Monceau. Now I had already owned this really good condition one in the black, but just the monogram one just made my heart sing. So even though I already had this one, I was still chasing this one. Now at this point, the seller had an ad up. Good price. Again, guys, I keep falling for the price. FOMO is a really big problem I deal with. Okay, so this had, now this is not the key for this bag. So this bag was listed with a strap and a bag, no key. Now I was okay with the no key, and I had asked the seller for extra photos. Again, I thought I was getting savvier. I was asking them questions about wear and tear. Now, somehow partway through this interaction between us, it turned out that the strap being sold with it was an aftermarket strap, not a Louis Vuitton strap. And I'm like, that's not in your description. And I sent her the screenshot. And I'm like, hello, you didn't declare this. And she's like, oh, sorry, I've been listing this on various platforms and I must have not added it to the Facebook one. And I'm like, okay, honest mistake. And she was willing to negotiate with me on the price regarding it. So she gave me a discount for the strap not being genuine. Okay, so we came to an agreement there. I sent her the money, she sent me the bag. Then when I got the bag, I'm like scrutinizing it. I'm like, what the hell is up with the hardware? This hardware, it looks like someone has tampered with the holes. The holes are not the same as my black Monceau hardware. It definitely looks like it's been tampered with, like someone's tried to make the hole bigger. And also at the time, the rings on there were way different to the rings on my black Monceau. And I'm like, okay, this is not the right part. And then I've since changed it out to aftermarket ones that more closely resemble the actual Monceau real hardware. But when I contacted her, she was like, oh, I didn't realize that wasn't a genuine part. I didn't know. And I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to think you're being devious. The first one about the strap, I let it go as a simple, honest error, you know, human error. You're listing on lots of platforms. But then now it's a not genuine part. And you're like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, I'm starting to think this is a red flag. Now, in the end, I should have pushed for a partial refund. But I don't know, I was just so stressed out by these sales at the time. I just let it go. And I'm just never buying from a Facebook group again. And I'm definitely not buying from her again. And I've never bought from Facebook again since then. So where did I go wrong? I asked for the extra photos. It was shown in the extra photos, but I didn't pick up on it. So I didn't take the time to scrutinize. You know why? Because I saw this ad when I was at work, and I was FOMOing when I was at work, and I couldn't think straight. I was like, oh my God, I have to quickly lock this sale down. I have to quickly lock this bag down so that it's mine. I didn't go home, take the time to scrutinize the photos, make sure everything matched up with the research of other genuine bags. So I let the FOMO get to me. I thought the price was good. The price wasn't that good, to be honest. I paid more for this one than I did for this one. And this one came with the strap and everything. Much better condition. So no, I didn't even get a good price. I got a shit price. Okay, where did I go wrong? I didn't scrutinize the photos properly, even though I had them and I would have seen them if I'd taken the time. I FOMO'd. Guys, I have a huge problem with FOMO. You guys know I have a shopping problem. Like, I've talked about this heaps on my channel. I know I have a problem with falling for prices, getting consumed, and I mean consumed with FOMO. I take it to a whole new level, guys. And like, I get obsessed. It's not healthy. It's not good. I don't want anyone else getting obsessed. Okay, so I went wrong there. Lesson learnt. Take my time with shopping. Take my time with scrutinizing and start working on my problems with FOMO. I have an internal problem I need to deal with. So it's not just like, oh, the seller's being devious. No, I walked into the trap. That's my own stupidity. You know, I need to work on myself and I need to work on my own shopping problems so I don't make these stupid decisions anymore. And I don't want you to fall for the same traps I've fallen for. Now, being a Facebook sale, where's my buyer's protection? Very little. So I think I sent it as family and friends. I can't remember. Or maybe I paid more and sent it as goods and services. Mistake number 5, a bag that's been repainted but not declared as so. Now, for some people, a bag being repainted is not a big deal, and neither is it for me. My issue is it's not as described, because if you say it's never been sparred, but then it's been painted, that's the deviousness. So again, this seller was devious. So we were at three of the sellers I think were devious in my story. No, 4. The only one I didn't think was devious was Brand JFA. So this one I bought from a Thai Instagram seller. I follow a few Asian Instagram professional resellers, and this was one that I'd been following for like over a year. Now, I bought this bag in 2022 and I was hunting down another Chanel with a single flap, gold CC turn lock that can go cross body. Now, we all know this was the first bag I bought because I just talked about it from the devious seller. It's a bad experience. Then I'd gotten this bag from Brand JFA. I love this bag. I thought this bag was good for the price, but it's just a little bit too short to go cross body. I do some hacks so I can go cross body, but I wanted one I didn't have to hack. That's when I found this bag. Now, this one can go cross body. And at the time, 2022, that wasn't a great year for a lot of us. And it wasn't a great year for me too. And I was probably admittedly doing some stress shopping. I was stressed out. And I probably wasn't even in a great financial position to be having been buying this bag, but I did anyway. So for this bag, I paid $1,600 US. And I asked the seller, has this bag been sparred? Because I'm like, wow, it's a white bag. It's so white. Like, has that been kept in great condition? And the seller said no. Now, the seller did send extra photos, which was great. Now, this seller spoke Thai, I spoke English, and we were using a translator. Well, I was using a translator. So maybe we got lost in translation somewhere, but the seller did send extra photos, so kudos to them for that. But they were being rude. I don't know if it's just like a cultural difference or a language difference, but I thought they were being rude. Now, I asked point blank period, has this bag been sparred? They said no. Now, I sent some of these photos to my cousin, who's also a luxury lover, to help me scrutinize the photos. And she did say from the corners, this coloring looks weird. That should have been a red flag for me. She's very experienced in buying pre-loved and vintage bags too. And I just fobbed her off and I went, oh, no, it's okay. I can deal with that wear and tear. Not realizing that was actually paint coming off as opposed to normal wear and tear. Because I'd never had a painted bag before, so I didn't have experience with this. Now, when I got my bag, I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels dry compared to this bag, which hasn't been sparred. Now, I learned from the purse forum that when a bag gets painted, especially like lambskin, they go dry. Now, I sent these photos to someone I met on the purse forum who's very experienced in buying vintage Chanel. And she was like, I hate to break it to you, but yes, that's a painted bag. And I'm like, oh no. And again, like I said, I don't care that it's painted as long as you disclose to me that it's painted and that I'm okay with it. And I was okay when I bought it, not telling me it's not been sparred. Like, if she had told me it was painted, that's okay, but it's the fact that it's not as described. Now, buying on Instagram, I paid direct. There was no PayPal. Zero protection there. So where did I go wrong? risky buying on Instagram. Like if you're okay with risky buying, go for it. I thought I was okay with risky buying and then it came back to bite me in the bum. And also, when someone tells you there's a red flag when they're helping you scrutinize the photos, don't fob them off. Listen to them. So I was given a red flag alert by my cousin and I just fobbed her off. So that's where I went wrong. So lessons learned. Maybe don't buy from Instagram. It's too risky. You have no buyer protection. And also, now that I know what a painted bag texture looks like, I'll know how to look out for that in future ads. And again, it's not about the fact that it's painted versus not painted. It's about not as described. And now I have no buyer protection to push for partial refund or whatever. Now, let me know, what do you think about me judging these 4 out of the 5 sellers as being devious? Again, do you think that I'm being too biased in the situation because I'm part of it? What would you have done? Would you have pushed for partial refunds? Would you have pushed to send the bags back? Let me know. And I also want to hear about what were your biggest pre-love purchasing blunders or mistakes. We all make mistakes and I definitely played a part, and that's why I talked about where I went wrong in each scenario and what I've learned from there. And I don't want anyone else walking into these traps. So let me know what you think in the description box down below. And if you haven't already seen my entire Chanel collection, I'll leave that video here for you to carry on with.